Aerial imagery shows steel hulls stretching across the horizon, row after row of new vessels under construction in Chinese shipyards. In Jiangsu and Shanghai, cranes swing over dry docks as welders work around the clock. And the scale is difficult to fathom, but the numbers are very clear now. 2023, China's shipyards produced 230 times more commercial shipping tonnage than the United States, which is an output gap that dwarfs any other industrial comparison in modern naval history. So what does this mean for global power projections, and why does it really matter now? First is the terrain that we have to keep in mind. China's coastline runs more than 14,000 kilometers, dotted with deep water ports and industrial clusters. Major yards like the Zonghua and Jiangnan spans hundreds of hectares with direct rail and highway links to steel mills and component suppliers. By contrast, the US shipbuilding footprint is fragmented, spread across legacy yards in Maine, Mississippi, and Virginia, many of which date back to the mid-20th century. This infrastructure feeds directly into capability. Chinese yards can simultaneously build dozens of large commercial vessels, from 20,000 TEU container ships to LNG carriers and bulkers. 2022 alone, China delivered over 23 million gross tons of new ships. The US delivered just 100,000 gross tons, which is a 230-to-1 ratio. The largest Chinese yards can launch a new ship every week using modular construction and automated welding lines. Meanwhile, US yards face bottlenecks. Many rely on manual processes, aging dry docks, and workforce that has shrunk by more than 60% since the 1980s. Supply chains for critical components like engines, propellers, and electronics often stretch overseas, adding months to build times. The average US commercial ship now takes 3 to 5 years from keel laying to delivery. China, the cycle can be less than 18 months. But why does this matter? Peacetime, commercial shipbuilding underwrites the industrial base for naval construction. The same cranes, steel mills, and workforce that build merchant ships can pivot to military hulls in a crisis. China's sheer output means it can surge auxiliary and logistics vessels and repair battle damage or replace losses at a pace the US cannot match. So this clearly changes the calculus dramatically, because in a conflict scenario, say, in the Western Pacific, China could rapidly expand its fleet of replenishment ships, including ferries and roll-on, roll-off transports, sustaining operations far from home ports. The US, with limited new construction and aging sealift assets, would struggle to keep pace, especially if commercial yards are already at capacity. That said, the US Navy has begun to sound the alarm, so they definitely feel the heat. 2023, Congress authorized new subsidies and contracts to modernize American yards, aiming to cut build times and boost output. Initiatives include digital design tools, expanded apprenticeship programs, and incentives for domestic steel production. But the scale of investment, which is tens of billions of dollars, will still take years to materialize. So put differently, the US faces a time deficit as well as a tonnage deficit. Because even with aggressive reforms, closing a 230-to-1 gap requires not just money, but a fundamental shift in industrial policy and workforce training. Meanwhile, China's yards continue to scale up, with plans to increase annual output by another 20% by end of 2025. So by any measure, this is not a question of numbers only. It's about the leverage that China already has right now. Control of global shipbuilding means control of maritime logistics, commercial shipping lanes, and the ability to project power at scale. In the event of a crisis, the side that can build, repair, and replace ships fastest holds a decisive advantage over the other. And as always, this is not a moral judgment, it's an analysis of incentives and logistics. China's shipbuilding supremacy is not accidental, it's the result of decades of state investment, vertical integration, and export-driven strategy. The US, once the world's leading shipbuilder, now faces a structural challenge that cannot be solved overnight. So zooming out, the 230-to-1 ratio is more than just a statistic. It's a signal of shifting industrial power with direct implications for military readiness, economic security, and the balance of influence at sea. Pressure on US shipyards is mounting and the clock is ticking, so if you like this kind of content, do me a favor and like and subscribe for more.